Welcome in, guys. Kick off the tip off. Back at it again here. Brady running it back, man. We obviously getting closer to the draft. So, what better way to kind of inch closer to it than to dive into one of the better positional groups in this upcoming draft? We're going to be ranking some running backs today, kind of giving our consensus opinion. I don't want to say consensus because actually I think our lists are going to be completely opposite. And I don't think that's a bad thing. It just kind of shows how deep this running back class is. And, like any other position in football, some guys like power running backs, speed running backs, things like that. But Brady, I think we're everybody in America and probably kids somewhere in Germany and all across the world, maybe Iceland even, are in consensus on the number one ranked running back in this class. So go ahead and start us off number one, Brady.
Yeah, like you said, I think everybody's got the same one. I've got Ashton Genty at one. Um, yeah, he measured in at 5'9", 215, 2,595 rushing yards this season, 29 touchdowns. He only had 138 receiving yards this season, but in 2023 he had 578. So he showcased the ability to be a very good receiving back. He just didn't quite do it this year, but was still awesome this year even without it. Um, yeah, he's got elite contact balance, some of the best I've ever seen, and I think he's a can't miss prospect at running back, honestly. And you could see him go as high as honestly number 4 to the Patriots, honestly.
Yeah, I agree. I think once you get outside of the, I'm not even going to really call Cam Ward a generational prospect. It's just kind of the quarterback influx. But like Travis Hunter's generational, Abdul Carter's generational edge, and this is this is generational running back talent. I mean, we're talking Bijan level, Saquon level. Your top echelon running backs. I really do think he's going to live up to that no matter where he goes. I don't necessarily think he's a system-based running back where we see, some high-ranked running backs fail to succeed because they're put in a wrong system. I think this guy at any level, any spot is going to produce. Kind of the only lacks and knocks on him was he's a little bit shorter, a little bit smaller than maybe some other running backs, like you said, only 5'9". In the competition level, being in that Mountain West. But we saw what he did against Oregon this past year. Obviously, the Penn State game in the playoff got bundled up a little bit. But a stage like that where a defense like Penn State had some time to prepare for him and just dogs all around that defense, it's not going to hurt his draft stock at all, man. This guy's generational. He's my number one as well. And kind of transitioning into this number two, Brady, this is where we'll probably break off, and I don't know if we'll meet up again. My number two, I am going to stay with the chalk a little bit. I'm going to go Marion Hampton. I think this is the second best running back in this class. I would imagine Genty goes somewhere, 3 through 10. And then we're talking about Hampton, 15 to 25, somewhere in that range. A guy I could potentially see teams like the Broncos, the Chargers, some of these running, not the Chargers, they got Najee, but some of these running back needy teams in the 20s could potentially jump the gun a little bit to come up and get Amari and Hampton. I like it. I like Hampton coming out of UNC here. Pretty good size, and I think this is a pretty good class for power running backs, Brady. I don't think Hampton necessarily wows you with his like ball carrier vision and finding the hole and hitting it, but as far as just being able to grind out yards, and I think the thing with Hampton is his speed is a little bit deceiving for his size, right? Guy that's 220, 6 foot, a little bit bigger than Genty. He moves pretty well for as fluid as he is.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely agree. Yeah, he had 1,660 rushing yards this season, 15 touchdowns, 373 rushing yards. I know I said in our last mock draft that we did there, I think I was the one who took him, or maybe I can't remember, but I know I talked about it. He isn't the best in the receiving game in terms of just being a pure pass catcher. He had 373 receiving yards, so he can do it. He's capable of it. But he more so than anything, he's a very very willing blocker. He's a big, like you said, he's a bigger running back, and he's willing to put his body out there against anybody. He's gonna try his best to really block you. I would say I actually have him probably as my. I have him as my RB2 as well in this class, I will say. But
Okay.
in terms of just pass blocking, I was going to say I have him, I would say, I'd say third. He's probably the third best pass blocking running back in this class of the ones I've watched thus far. And yeah, I think he's a very good running back. And I know you thought I would go somewhere else with number two, but he's coming up very shortly.
I
But
got you.
yes, I did go Hampton. So we both have Hampton 2, Genty 1. You want me to just
Yeah.
move on
Well,
to three here, or
yeah, I mean, just one last thing to touch on. I mean, 4.4, 4.46 there, 40 at the combine. So this is a guy we're going to be hearing day one. I believe that without a doubt, especially with kind of all the craziness that's getting ready to unfold with the draft. I think this is a lock. This NFL draft is a lock for two running backs, potentially three to go in the first round. I really do believe that. So
yeah, I would definitely agree. And this is where our lists are gonna very drastically be different. At three, I have Damian Martinez out of Miami. I'm very very high on him. He measured in at 6 foot 232. He finished the season with only 1,006 rushing yards, 10 touchdowns, and 204 receiving yards. Um, but I think he's got. I don't know. Can you check and see what his actual 40 was? Because I don't know if he ran at the combine or anything.
so he ran a 4.5 40.
And usually,
Outside of that, only other stats: 35-inch vertical jump, 10 foot broad jump, or 10 feet broad jump.
I usually I think that threshold is right at that 4.54. If you're below 4.52 as a running back, I'm pretty comfortable with that speed. Obviously, you want to see faster, but I'm not upset with that. But I think he's one of those guys. He looks a lot faster on the field than he does with his actual 40-yard dash. He's got very good contact balance, nothing comparable to Genti, I would say. But he's got very, very good contact balance and some of the best in this class, I would say. And just like Hampton, I will say he's a capable pass catcher. He has some real bad blunders of the games I've watched where he has an easy catch and he will drop it. He doesn't have the best hands by any means, but he is more than willing to put his body on the line to block anybody. I he So he's my RB3, and I like him a lot. And I watched the Florida game actually, and I don't know if you know who Desmond Watson is. I'm pretty sure it is. He's the
Big about 4.30, 4.40 guy.
yeah. So he actually put his body on the line to block him one play, and once I saw that, I was like, okay, yeah, this guy, I'm sold on him. I really like what I see out of him in the pass blocking game. So I actually have him as my RB2 in terms of just pass blocking. Uh, in the passing game in general, like I said, he doesn't have the best hands by any means, but just if you're just looking for a pure pass blocker, I think he can get it done, and he's willing to put his body on the line for that. So he's my
Well,
RB3.
one thing when you look at his stats, right? I mean, you have to remember when he was at Oregon State, quarterback was pre-fall off DJ Ugalavea. At that time was still pretty relevant and a good college quarterback in a system where they threw the ball, decently. It was Pac-12, so that's kind of the style of play it was. And then obviously when he came over to Miami, you're playing alongside Cam Ward, and we saw the type of offense that they run, kind of that gunslinger, Cam Ward hero ball at times. So guy, don't let the stats deceive you. This is a really good running back prospect, but he actually, Brady, you introduced me to him, but he does not scratch my top 8. So that's somebody I'm not going to touch on in my rankings. So transitioning to my number 3, Brady, I am going an Ohio State running back, but it is not Travion Henderson. I'm going Quinshawn Judkins, 6-foot running back, 221 pounds, ran a 4.48 40. This is one of those guys, and another guy on this list that I'll be talking about. When I watch them, it's one of those things where numbers go out the door, combine goes out the door, and I just think it just looks like a pro style back. I think the way that Judkins moves around, hits the hole, is able to make one cut and be gone. It just looks like a true 3-down back in the NFL. I don't necessarily have his receiving numbers up in front of me, and I would believe at the next level, especially where, depending on where he gets drafted, I would imagine second round, no later than early third, would be a rotational piece, which would be pretty good for a runner like him, right? He has good size. He has good burst. He'll hit the home run on occasion. I'm a big fan of Judkins. I like him a tad bit more than Henderson, which I guess is a little crazy to some people. But we're talking about a guy eclipsed 1,000 yards all 3 seasons that he was in college at Ole Miss and Ohio State. And, I granted, yes, it was Ohio State this past year, an SEC school at Ole Miss, so pretty good offensive lines he was running behind. But I'm a big fan of Judkins, one of my favorite running backs in this class.
Yeah, I like Judkins as well. I won't jump you for who my number 4 is or anything, but I do have his receiving stats here. He did only have 161 receiving yards this season for Ohio State, but it's hard to really judge him on that because that isn't the role that he was asked to play in any capacity. Because when you look at a guy like Travion Henderson, that was their pass catching, and he was in there on the pass catching running back, and he was in there on the passing downs and everything like that. Judkins they use as more of this big body, like bruising back, which he is more than capable of doing. Like you said, 6 foot 220, big running back, but he can do more than that. It's just that's not what they needed necessarily out of him, because they had two running backs that are going to be day two picks at the latest. Like they're both going to be or like third round picks at the latest. And when you have two guys like that, you want to get both of them the football because they're both very good football players. And so you kind of you get their best qualities in a sense, and you kind of just mesh them together to make the ultimate running back. And that's kind of what they did with Judkins. He's much more capable pass catcher than what his stats would say.
Absolutely.
Or you want to go 4, or you want me to go?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, so I do have Judkins at 4.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I feel like I kind of just you've already touched on most of the stuff about Judkins, and I just brought up some of the stats there. I don't know if you said, like you said, 1,000-yard rusher every year. He had 14 touchdowns this season. And like I said, he's capable of a lot more than what they let him showcase even. And I think I've said this to you before. I think a big problem with Judkins is he at the beginning of this cycle and stuff was when college football the game dropped, and he had the most broken spin move in the game. And I think a lot of people kind of just automatically assumed he'd be like RB1 just because of that, because he was the best player in the game. And then he hasn't quite been RB1 or anything like that. Like there's been other running backs who have been good, and he's kind of been overshadowed at this point. But he's still a very, very capable running back, and I would be very comfortable with a team taking him as early as an early second-round pick. I think I think the top 4 running backs that I have in my top 8, I think are all worthy of early second-round picks, or higher, obviously. Genty way higher, but So if you want to get into your number 4.
Yeah, number 4. I mean, bouncing right off of it, his teammate Travion Henderson, like you mentioned, both can play a complete 3-down role if given the opportunity, right? And I think in this case, Travion Henderson showcased a little bit more that 3-down role back at Ohio State. I think he played that a little bit more than Judkins, but if it were vice versa and Judkins was in that role, we could be sitting here talking about, Judkins the way that people are talking about Travion Henderson. So like Judkins and Henderson for me are literally interchangeable, because I'm not saying they're the same running back, but based on what we saw this past year at Ohio State together, and don't get me wrong, right? I think Chip Kelly, it's not a coincidence that they went out and brought in Judkins to pair along Travion Henderson. It's the modern day NFL style of having 2 extremely good running backs. We saw how that worked out. I mean, obviously won a national championship. There's 2 talented guys. So Travion Henderson, a lot of the same, traits and stuff that I'm going to say about Judkins. I do think that he has a little bit more 3-down style to him. I think he's a little bit better. I don't even say a little bit. I think he is a pretty good gap better in the passing game. Travion Henderson, I mean, 4.40, not jumping into too much to numbers. Like I said, sometimes it's like just turn off the numbers, watch the game, see how they play. A lot of people remember the games that he was having there in the national football playoffs. And yeah, man, he's a stud. He is the guy I would imagine is, a little bit higher of a pick, kind of a border sneaky first round pick. I mean, you took him in our 1 mock to Washington there in the late first round. So yeah, Travion Henderson is my 4. And that's kind of a tier break for me, Brady. I think those top 4, Genty and Hampton, I say Genty S, obviously, Hampton A, and then Juddy and Henderson, my B guys.
Yeah, so I've actually got Henderson in my 5, and I've mentioned it with already the last 2 running backs. I think Henderson is by far the best pass blocker in this class, and I think for me that really boosts him. He's got really good home run speed, measured in at 5'10", 210. He also had over 1,000 yards this year for Ohio State with 1,010. He had 10 touchdowns as well. He had 281 receiving yards, so over 120 more than Judkins did this season. And he really showcased, like especially in the college football playoffs, like you said, he really showcased that breakaway speed with some big long runs. And I think I would say there's a tier break for me between Judkins and him, but I'm not a Henderson hater by any means. And like you said, I did take him in the first round of that one mock draft. Now, me personally, I wouldn't do that, but I think that what he offers in the passing game alone and that three down capabilities, I think that that's going to turn a lot of heads with some GMs. And I would, if he were, as crazy as it is to say, if he were RB2 off the board, I'm not sure I would be completely surprised if he went over Hampton just because of what he offers is in the passing game. Um,
Absolutely.
I have him at 5, and I said there's a tier between him and Judkins, and I don't want it to seem like I hate Henderson by any means like that. I think he's a very good running back, and I just think this is a loaded running back class, and a guy like Henderson, just he doesn't quite do it for me in the sense like he should be drafted that high when you can get a guy later who in this class could serve a lot of the same purposes. I don't think you'll get a pass blocker quite like Henderson, but I think a lot of the other stuff that Henderson offers you can find later in the draft. Uh,
Yeah, I agree.
who would be your 5?
Jurgen, who are you? Your top. You've gave 4, correct? You
I
have
have 5.
Genty, Hampton, Martinez, Judkins, and
Judkins.
Henderson.
Yep.
Okay,
So
just
it's your
making
5.
sure I was up to date. I got you. So Brady, let's talk some Big 12 football. Running back that I really like, and he's sitting here at my 5 spot, and is a guy that I am way higher on than consensus. Similar to the Omarion Hampton. Don't know if it's because me especially, I don't want to say you because you watch, Florida, um, just keep up with Big 12 a lot more than other people because of West Virginia. But number 5, give me Ollie Gordon. This is a little bit of a risky ranking, I guess, for me. This could be one we look back and you're like, yeah, buddy, what the hell were you on that night putting him 5? But here's my deal, man. This is a guy. He's got to go to the right. He's got to go to the right system for somebody to use him. And the reason I say that is the frame that he has can be utilized in an NFL offense. I truly believe that. 6'1", 226, right? He has effort. He has some of the best effortless like power in terms of running in this draft class. I think this is a true bulldozer, and he's a guy like he's not going to wow you with his speed. He ran a 4.6 at the combine. He that's not the selling point. The selling point here is a production, especially not this past year, is the year before. This past season, 880 yards, 13 touchdowns on a miserable Oklahoma State team. I mean, Alan Bowman was their quarterback, and teams knew just load the box. I mean, if Alan Bowman, who was 28 years old, is going to beat us, so be it. They were not going to let Ollie Gordon do it because they know how talented he is, right? So I I'm I'm sure this isn't even a guy in your top 8, Brady. I'd have to imagine that. I'm huge on Ollie Gordon.
Yeah, me and you both were very big on Ollie Gordon last offseason, and it was disappointing to see the fall off this year. But yeah, another thing you didn't even touch on that really affected him is he battled through an injury all year this year that really hindered his abilities. And like you said, they stacked the box and they just saying let Alan Bowman beat us. And if we're being brutally honest, he didn't do that very often.
He didn't
So
do that very often.
uh,
2023 here. I'm selling my case right now. If you completely take out 2024, which I get it, you can't do. You have to look at it how it is. If you only watch tape on 2023 Ollie Gordon, Brady, you can't tell me that people wouldn't have him up there with Judkins and Henderson. 285 carries, 1,732 yards, 21 touchdowns. In the receiving game, 330 yards on 39 catches with a touchdown. I mean, that's what sells me, I guess, because I remember, and I would say remember like it was long ago, but just that year that he had in 2023, and then he kind of had the hype going into this year, and it just didn't pan out. But I didn't forget, and that's why I'm putting him 5. I still believe.
yeah, I mean, I don't hate that. I won't reveal my top 8 necessarily fully to you, but he might sneak in, he might not. We'll see. Do you want me to move on to 6, or do you got it? Me? All
Go
right.
ahead.
So my number 6, I'm gonna go with Dylan Sampson out of Tennessee. Measured in at 5'11", 200 pounds. Had 1,488 rushing yards this season with 22 rushing touchdowns. He only had 143 receiving yards. But I think you simply just can't ignore a guy that puts up 22 rushing touchdowns in a season, I think.
In the SEC.
In the SEC. And, one thing I will say, maybe this is, I don't know if this is a hot take or anything like that. And some people might greatly disagree. Some people might really agree with this. Oh, I do not think Nico Amiavella, or however you say his name, is honestly all that good, really. I thought he was fine for, you know, what they kind of needed, I suppose. But I think the cog that was that offense was Dylan Sampson, and I think when they kind of went as far as he could take them, and he did the best he could, I think. And I just think, like I said, you can't ignore 22 touchdowns, especially in the SEC at that. And I just think, you know, he's kind of a little wrecking ball. I need to watch a little bit more film on him, but I just, like I said, I couldn't ignore those numbers, and I had to get him in here somewhere, and I thought this was an appropriate place for him. And I need to watch some more to have it like a definitive ranking on him. But I'm a big fan of Dylan Sampson, of what I've watched thus far on him.
Yeah, so unfortunately for Dylan Sampson, you and I both have him ranked 6, which is equivalent to the Tyler Warren take that we had on our mock draft. Usually, when we both hate a player, he becomes an All-Pro, and then when we both like a certain player, he seems to just be terrible. So I do have Dylan Sampson as my number 6 too, Brady. I'm not going to beat a dead horse or anything. I think you described it pretty great. I will say he just fits the mold of this new wave of backs that we're seeing. He may be less than ideal size for the running back, but like you said, a wrecking ball. And he actually, I don't know if you like this or not, he reminds me a little bit of Bucky Irving. That's kind of the comp that I'm gonna throw out for him. It's kind of who he reminds me of. And like you said, the production in the SEC alone is kind of eye opening. And like, yeah, I mean, Nico wasn't the one carrying the weight there in Tennessee as far as the offense. I mean, there's a reason that he was bashing it and is now at UCLA. Dylan Sampson was keeping this offense afloat, and Josh Heupel obviously speaks super highly on him. So I have him ranked as 6 as well. Rolling in here to my number 7 spot, Brady, I'm going to go Caleb Johnson out of Iowa. This is one of the more polarizing running backs, in my opinion, because as far as, you said it best. A lot of these guys are kind of interchangeable. It's what you like, what you prefer. Caleb Johnson, for me, while like he's a good power runner, uh, I don't know. I think sometimes he gets away from like his strengths of his game a little bit, if that makes sense. He tries to be a little more of a, I don't want to say a gadget running back, but he doesn't use his traits to his best ability, right? But when he does in a zone run offense, he's up there with Judkins. He's up there with Henderson. And I like what I see. He's got deceptive speed for a power running back. And the size, obviously 261, 224. So like, this is a guy that can get north pretty quick and get downhill and blow up some linebackers or secondary on his way to the end zone.
Yeah, so maybe it suffers the same fate as Dylan Sampson, unfortunately. I also have Caleb Johnson as my 7. Like you said, he's a big back. He finished the season with 1,535 rushing yards, 21 rushing touchdowns. He only had 190 receiving yards. But for an Iowa team that isn't, too keen on passing the football, that's really not all that bad. There's definitely been some lower receiving yards totals that I've mentioned thus far. But
let me chip this in real quick, Brady, because I like what you said right there. Obviously, poor quarterback play. I just said sometimes it looks like he gets away from his strength as a runner, but sometimes you have to. when you're toting the rock, 20 plus times a game, there will definitely be some reps where a play blows up, the hole's not there, something like that. And, kind of, I guess that was a better way to put it. I think maybe his improvising in the run game in terms of, making a negative -3-yard rush a 2-yard rush was something that I saw as kind of like iffy on.
Yeah, and the best way I could really describe it is, I feel like he, as big as he is, he's far too much of an east-west runner rather than just a north-south runner. He tries to get a little bit too fancy sometimes, and that might just be due to the Iowa offense and its where it lacks in so many different components, but it might just be a thing that he unfortunately just kind of does. One notable running back that I know I'm a fan of. I'm pretty sure you are as well. Kenneth Walker, pretty good running back in the NFL. He's a very notorious east-west rusher far too often. When a lot of times he can go north-south and just kind of get those extra yards. But the good thing he does with it is sometimes that running east-west can break into a big play. It's just you also have to suffer some negative plays with it as well. So it just kind of depends on what you want. But for me, a guy that is as big as Caleb Johnson is, I just don't want that east west running as much as
Yeah.
he does it. But I like you really don't know if it's an Iowa thing or if it's just a him thing. And if it is just an Iowa thing, you got to worry that that's something that is like gotten into his actual game that's going to be a future issue. Um, so we don't necessarily know. And I was kind of on the fence about even having him in this top 8. But I said with Dylan Sampson before, you couldn't ignore the 22 rushing touchdowns. With Caleb Johnson, you cannot ignore the 21 rushing touchdowns. I know it's not quite the SEC, and I don't want to be an SEC glazer by any means. But it's just there's too much production to just simply ignore. And that's why Caleb Johnson makes my list here at 7. So
Yeah, I agree. I think actually the 7, 8 spots in these rankings, it's like you're looking at it and there's probably 6 guys outside of our top 8 that could be interchangeable in a heartbeat. I mean, you could sit here and sell the case for RJ Harvey, Taj Brooks, DJ Giddens, like a lot of these running backs. It just kind of comes down to preference. Like I said, it's a really good draft class for power running backs. And like you said, if you're getting a Caleb Johnson north south and not a ton of east west, I like that Kenneth Walker take. I think you're getting a pretty good running back, especially at the value that he's going to go at. I don't know if this is a guy that we'll see a early day 2, but somewhere late second round, maybe middle to or early to middle third. I think he could be a guy that turns heads for sure. So coming in at my 8 spot, Brady, I am going Devin Neal from Kansas, another Big 12 running back. This is a guy, I mean, he's as steady as it gets, in my opinion, man. You look at his 4 years at Kansas, 1,000-yard rusher every single year. This past year, 1,266 yards, 16 rushing touchdowns. So this is a guy I'm actually hoping the Chiefs draft at some point. I just think he's similar to my Ollie Gordon take, a guy where he just looks like a pro back. I don't necessarily know about workload in the NFL, right? Obviously, a really good college producer because of the amount of carries that he's getting. So, what does he look like in a lesser role? Maybe 8 to 10 carries, like something like that. I don't really know what you're getting from the pass game in the NFL level from him, but Devin Neal, a really good runner. Like what stands out to me is his vision. I think he's one of the better running backs in this class in terms of seeing the hole, making cutbacks before the line of scrimmage, and just he doesn't have take the top off speed, but it's sneaky.
yeah, I'm a big Devin Neal fan actually as well, and he didn't quite crack my top 8. I really wanted to put him in here, but the guy that I have at 8, I know it's going to make you smile, but if I had to make any change initially, my top 8, I did have this guy up at 8 at 7, and I had Neal at 8, and I had Caleb Johnson off my list unfortunately. But so Devin Neal's probably still my RB9. It's just he unfortunately doesn't crack the list for me. But like you said, he's a consistent producer, and I kind of said it earlier with Samson, and what was it? Was it Jalen? Is that his name? Jalen Daniels, the QB.
Yeah,
He
for
had that.
Kansas. Yeah,
Yeah, he had that one real good year, but for the most part, he wasn't the cog that ran that defense. Just like I said with Dylan Sampson earlier, it was Devin Neal. Neal was your guy that They were just when they needed it, they gave him the football, and good things usually happened. So yeah, I'm a fan of Neal, but like I said, he unfortunately doesn't crack my top 8 here. But my number 8, as I said, I know it's going to make you smile. I do have Ollie Gordon here. And you took a lot of the stuff I was going to say earlier. I have all of his stats down from this year, and then I have his 2023 stats, which, as you said earlier, are very, very good stats. But if you could probably tell with my list here, a lot of my running backs are all 6 foot plus, and they're on that 220 plus range for the most part. I have some exceptions, and then a guy like Genty, he's just his own exception in general. But I just Ollie Gordon, to me, the 2023 production just cannot be ignored. I know you, like you said, you really just got to take this year as like it's got to factor in. You can't just ignore it by any means. But I said it earlier when you mentioned him. He dealt with an injury all season. He had to deal with Alan Bowman, who might be worse than an actual injury. And there was just a lot of stuff that went on with Ollie Gordon this year that really lowers him down the rankings for a lot of people. But I don't think it's completely fair to him, and I think he's still worthy of being in most people's top 8, or where you even had him at 5. I think 5 is a perfectly fine ranking in my opinion as well. But yeah, I'm a big fan of Ollie Gordon still, even with the down year.
Yeah, I just think he's a guy, like, if he would have even had just a little bit better production, used to the injury, Alan Bowman, stuff like that, a guy that maybe consensus would be higher on. But yeah, so I'm kind of surprised that our lists aren't too crazy off. I do feel bad for Dylan Sampson, a really talented running back. You and I just both happen to have him ranked the same spot, so his career is probably done before it even starts. So sorry, Dylan Sampson. That's for sure on us. So let's pivot off this, Brady, and let's before we talk about guys that just missed the cut, let's talk about the elephant in the room, a guy that was in neither of our top 8. And somebody wrote, "Where the hell is Cam Scatterboo? Where is Cam Scatterboo? He's what the." Shut up. Shut up. Shut up. I'm
Yeah.
so shut up, man. 5'9", 212. I don't know. He literally, bro, Cam Scatterbeer reminds me of like those little dump trucks you get as a kid, and you just play around a little bit, and then you just kick it. Like, that's what he's going to be in the NFL, in my opinion. Teams are going to draft him, see what they got, use him a little bit here and there, and 3-4 years from now, this guy's not going to be relevant, man. This is Peyton Hillis, Trent Richardson 2.0, just not at the draft, the Trent Richardson, not at the price that you have to pay to get him. But go ahead, man.
Yeah, I'm out on Scatterbo, and maybe based off what you just said there, maybe not quite as out as you might be, but I'm not a Scatterbo fan whatsoever. I one thing that everybody like loves about Scatterbo is he's like this supposedly bigger back that everybody just kind of bounces off of. But from what I've watched, honestly, I feel like for his build type and everything and how big he's supposed to be, and he's slower, he really doesn't break tackles quite like you'd want out of a running back built like that. His contact balance is actually very, very poor in my opinion. The one positive I will say about him, actually, though, which I feel like most people just kind of overlook when they talk about Cam Scatterbo, I think he's actually a positive in the passing game, more so as a receiver than a blocker, honestly. But I do think he's got pretty decent hands, which is surprising for his player type and build and everything. But unfortunately for him, I don't see a fit in the league where this slow, clunky running back that's short and isn't very fast and has poor contact balance but can actually catch pretty good. I just don't see a team where that necessarily is something that anybody is wanting, and they're actively like trying to get this guy the football. Now, he could honestly, as you've said multiple times before, we both are kind of out on him. So the chances of him being a Hall of Famer have honestly just went up by about 20%. But I just don't see a team that I can envision where he fits in to be
Oh, I
like
do.
the guy. You do. You see.
Oh, I do.
I see a team.
This
I
guy.
see teams that can reach on him and want him to be that guy. I
Yeah,
just
that's a
don't
better
see
way
a
to put it.
team that would draft him and he would fit in to what they want and be good. That's like an actual high level running back in the league. I just don't see a scenario for that. I'll
This
let
guy's
you
get this,
talk
this
about him a
guy's
little
got
bit.
Pitt. This guy's got Pittsburgh Steelers written all over him, I fear.
Yeah, yeah, I'd have to. I think you're right about
before
that.
before I get off this, because I could probably spend 24 hours straight talking about my hate for Cam Scatteraboo and Tyler Warren. I could split that up 12 and 12 and talk about it for 24 hours. The dispute, right? They'd be like, well, you have Ollie Gordon ranked 5th, and they both ran similar 40 times. I think Ollie Gordon was like a 4.61. Scatteraboo ran a 4.65 at his pro day. Scatterboo's 5'11, 215. Gordon 6'1. So similar production. Scatterboo this year, Gordon his one good year. I guess this goes for Ollie Gordon's side as well. I just think that he's a little bit Ollie Gordon's a more gifted runner, but this year in the Big 12, I'm not sure if people, were watching the games. It's pretty horrific defense. Like there's not a ton of good defenses that you're going to see in the Big 12. So you combine that aspect with the fact that this guy is seeing anywhere from minimum 22 carries, 20, I'll say 20 carries minimum to 30, 32 every single weekend. Your production numbers are obviously going to be a little bit inflated. So you transition that to the NFL level, what do you really have? So that's kind of my whole thing. Uh, ooh, I don't know, man. So Brady, go ahead, name a couple guys that maybe were just right outside of your list.
Yeah, so like I said, I mentioned Devin Neal there. He just barely misses the list for me, and he was on the list at one point, honestly. You mentioned DJ Gidden. He's not. I'm not quite as high on him. One guy I do really like though, but he just didn't make this list, and I know you were a big fan of there for a while. RJ Harvey. He has the production to easily be on this list, but as I said earlier, for what I like these bigger running backs that kind of have the power scheme as their like first like their best trait. And he's a smaller, faster running back, so he just isn't my type of running back that I'm a big fan of. And then another guy that missed this list, and I'm honestly very, very, very surprised he did not make your list, is it Jaden Blue or Jalen Blue? It's Jaden, isn't it?
Yeah, Jaden Blue from Texas.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm surprised he didn't make your list because last I had spoken to you about running backs, you sent me some stuff about him, and you were very, very high on him, is what you said. So I'm surprised he didn't make your list. And I haven't watched enough film on him to really like have a definitive opinion about him. So I don't want to like hype him up and be completely wrong, or hate on him and be completely wrong in that aspect either. But the measurables and the tests that he was able to do, I do like those. I like everything I've seen them. I like the physical profile, but I just haven't seen film to really have a definitive opinion about him yet. So those are probably just off the top of my head without looking at a list of some remaining running backs. Those are the ones I can think of right now. I know you mentioned Taj Brooks earlier. I don't really have much of an opinion on him, and I know
Yeah,
there's a few other guys, I'm sure.
Yeah, just some of those Big 12 running backs are going to be interesting prospects. It'll be interesting to see how they're valued in this upcoming draft. RJ Harvey, Taj Brooks, DJ Giddens, guys like that. So, the two guys that were just right outside of my cut, you obviously mentioned one, Jaden Blue from Texas, just an unbelievable athlete. I think he's going to get a chance on an NFL team somewhere in the mid to late rounds on day 3, just because of his just a pure athlete, man. I mean, this kid moves quick. He moves sharp. He moves sharp. Great acceleration. Like, really, really, really good runner. Like, has some Devon A. Chain type runs sometimes. So a guy that I'm super high on, and will be interesting to see where he goes. And then my other one, Brady, a guy I'm not surprised he didn't make your top 8, but not even cracking nowhere near it. Bashaw Tootin from Virginia Tech. The kind of the knock on him, other than just ACC, 5'11", 209, some ball, like that's anytime you hear him, it's like, well, he's good at this, he's good at this, good at this. But in his years at Virginia Tech and just college in general, he's had turnover issues. So the fumble issues, not a good look, obviously, in the NFL realm of things. But Bashaw Tootin was a guy I had right outside. And then Woody Marks as well. I think Woody Marks from USC is one of the better just pure receiving backs in this NFL draft. I'll be interested to see if he gets a chance as a draft pick, maybe round 6, 7, something like that, to strictly play that third down role. I think he could, in the right position, could really develop into a really good third down running back.
Yeah, and I did mention him. He did run the fastest 40 this year for all running backs at the combine, if I'm not mistaken. But like, yeah, I'm pretty. Was it him?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
He did. Yep.
So, but he kind of fits into that same. He, like you said, the turnover issues is a big one for me. But he's just not like a necessarily power running back. He's more that speedster, and those just aren't favorite types of running backs. One running back I didn't mention, neither of us mentioned, but if we're being honest with ourselves, he's probably actually 1B in this class, is Montreal Johnson, purely because of where he played college football at. But if I'm being real about Montreal Johnson, he doesn't quite even, he's probably not even in my top 12 necessarily. I think he just kind of got overshadowed by some younger players this year on Florida.
Oh,
And yeah, and and last year another guy that we didn't mention, Trevor Etienne. He's kind of with like the Ollie Gordon, where he had a fall off the year this year, so he's fallen off a lot of people's lists. But I could see him being all right as well. But oh man, Montreal Johnson had to share the backfield with him the year prior, and then shared the backfield with Jaden Ball this year and some other guys. But I'd be surprised to see Montreal Johnson get a shot at being an actual running back, but I could easily see him being like a rotational back in some certain backfields in the league. But the big thing with a lot of these running backs, even the guys like from our 7 down, like Caleb Johnson down, you're looking at a guy that might get, they could get drafted in the third, fourth round, a guy like Caleb Johnson or Ollie Gordon, Dylan Sampson, whatever it may be, uh, the third to sixth round range. But you run into the issue of, is there opportunity for them to even get on the field? Like a guy last year that I know a lot of people were big fans of, and I can't quite remember where he was drafted or anything, but Kamani Vidal for the Los Angeles Chargers, I know he was like a draft darling for a lot of people, and he was big for dynasty drafts and stuff. A lot of people really liked him, and he just never got the opportunity this year, just because you run into the issue of like these guys that have already been in the league and have, they're getting paid already. They're getting paid these bigger bucks, and they fit a scheme better, and they don't have to learn this playbook and all that stuff. So you run into the issue of, are these guys going to actually get the opportunity? Because you might see a guy like Ollie Gordon, who we both are big fans of. You got him at 5, I got him at 8, and he might just never even get an actual snap in the NFL to where we can even see what he could be. So it's harder to tell with these lower running backs in this loaded class. So yeah.
yeah, absolutely, man. So that's kind of wrap it up for the running back side of things. So probably definitely take a dive into quarterbacks, wide receivers, some other positions, gearing up here for the draft, man. So as always, guys, like, comment, subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.